Good morning to you, Tessa. First of all, your thoughts yesterday on these students, past and present, their parents, standing up against rampant racism at their school. And this is what we need to see more of, isn't it?
Morning, Gareth. And for me, this wasn't a case of rampant racism. This is a case of South Africa every day. South Africa has got an endemic racism problem. And depending on which spaces and circles that you're in, you may experience it more directly or indirectly. But every day, South Africans, black South Africans particularly, are being treated, misjudged on the basis of their skin, on the basis of the connotations that blackness has in this country, and on the basis that our society is generally created with whiteness and maleness in mind, and white privilege and masculinity in mind. And so there are a lot of judgments that come that expect you to adopt white ways of doing things, adopt white culture. And so we cannot overlook that, and we cannot pretend like it's happening in a vacuum, because it's not only part of our history, it's very much part of our present. And when these things flare up, it is just a reminder that we are not very far when it comes to transforming our country, when it comes to race.
Some would have expected, especially in our schooling system, Tessa, that the ignorance of whiteness would have fallen away some time ago. But we heard from the one pupil who can recall an issue back in, I think it was grade 4 for her at the time, when a white teacher flippantly commented about her hair. Can we talk about the hair for a moment? It's not just hair, is it? It's the identity of the African child. It's your personality. It's how you identify yourself. Why is the hair issue still such a big problem for white educators in the country? Because that seems to be a recurring theme, doesn't it?
Yes, guys, we must remember where all of this started and the ways in which physical appearance got linked to morality. That was how the colonial project played itself out. And it was a way for colonist white people to distinguish between people who were like them, who they would consider good, versus people who did not look like them, who they considered to be inferior. And so when we translate that into 2001, or 2021, what we see is a world, particularly the professional environment, when you go into corporate, that says that when your hair looks closer to a white person's hair, then it is good. When it looks closer to a black person's hair, then it is bad. And our schools are places that are preparing you for the world, preparing you for that corporate life. And so they're using those standards to say that if we're going to prepare you for a world that expects you to hold the standards of whiteness, then we're going to hold you to these standards when it comes to your hair, when it comes to your physical appearance, when it comes to the language you use. Young people always tell us when they're job seekers that one of the biggest hurdles that they face isn't whether they have the skills, it's whether they have the right cultural markers and whether they can speak the right languages when they get to those first interviews, and they get turned away because of the way they speak English or Afrikaans, and whether that is the preference that they have in terms of their language. Until we admit that we have created a world that is hostile to black identity and that we've made that normal, we're going to constantly have young people who are screaming out that all they want to do is be themselves in a country that told them they can be that, but is not willing to do the work to change.
Tessa, in the last minute I have with you, and I understand just how unfair this question will be to try and answer in a minute or thereabouts for me, what I'm confused about is we've had these discussions here on ENCA for years. These discussions were being had long before I even joined this company. How is it still possible in 2021 that schools do not know that this is simply unacceptable? What kind of bubble are some of these schools existing in? How is it not plausible that they are unaware of just how wrong this is? I still cannot understand how we end up talking about stories like this.
It's not that people are unaware, Gareth. It's that they believe they can get away with it. They can believe they can get away with living in, as you say, bubbles where no one will hold them accountable for racism. And we need racial literacy in this country. We need to take seriously that racism isn't about some kind of Mandela mythology. It's about learning when racism shows up, learning how to be accountable for racism, learning how to confront and own your own racism and change it. We have a racial literacy problem in this country where we can't even see our own racism, never mind change it. Until we do the work as a society and we don't just rely on the mythology of Rainbow Nation, we are never going to overcome this problem, and people will just hide in their bubbles until we find them.
Yeah, racial literacy, not just for students in schools, but also perhaps more importantly for teachers and educators. Tessa Dooms, I like the way you said that. Racial literacy is necessary, a lot more of it in this country.